You got pregnant by a pathetic poor man? Her adoptive mother shouted before striking Amari with a slap she would never forget. In that moment, the woman who once cradled her at 10 years old looked like a stranger. Without sympathy or hesitation, they kicked her out that very night, treating her unborn baby as a stain that had to be erased. Amari believed her world had ended. But fate had one twist left, because the man they mocked as a poor nobody soon returned with a true identity that shocked the entire elite society. Perhaps that slap was the first and also the last. Please like, comment where you are watching from, and support the channel. Amari Grace moved through the glittering ballroom with a soft grace that made many guests turn their heads. She wore a champagne evening gown chosen by her adoptive mother, and every step she took echoed the quiet discipline she had learned since childhood. At 22 years old, she had just completed her internship at a renowned architecture firm and carried herself with the poise of someone who had been trained to be perfect. To the Whitmore family, she was not only a daughter, she was their greatest success. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore stood near the stage, greeting donors with well-rehearsed smiles. They were powerful figures in the city, known for their wealth and their influence. They had adopted Amari when she was 10 years old, and they often reminded her that everything she had achieved was because they had invested in her. Tonight was no different. Whenever someone asked about the elegant young woman beside them, they replied with pride. Mrs. Whitmore spoke first. "This is Amari, our greatest blessing. She proves that proper guidance can create remarkable results." Her tone was warm in front of strangers, yet the words pressed on Amari like invisible chains. Their son, Preston Whitmore, stood nearby. He was a year older than Amari and rarely missed a chance to make her feel small. He kept his smile polite in public, but his eyes always carried a hint of superiority. To him, she had never been a real sibling. She was an outsider who owed their family everything. Amari thanked the guests who complimented her dress or her achievements, but her mind drifted far from the ballroom. She thought of Lysander Quinn, the man who had given her a quiet refuge from the pressure she carried every day. He was a street violinist with warm eyes and a gentle smile. They met months ago during one of her late-night walks after work. At first, she had only stopped to listen to his music. Over time, she discovered she could breathe around him. They shared sandwiches on an old park bench, and he always spoke to her as if she were simply Amari, not the perfect daughter of the Whitmore family. He never asked for anything, and that made her feel free. As she stood beside a table covered in crystal glasses, she rested her hand lightly on her stomach. The truth inside her made her heart race. She was pregnant. The discovery had filled her with joy for a brief, fragile moment. Then fear had swallowed that happiness. She knew exactly what the Whitmore family expected from her. After her internship, she was supposed to marry the son of a powerful business partner. This arrangement would strengthen both families. Her unexpected pregnancy was a threat that could break the entire plan. Her thoughts scattered when Preston stepped beside her. He leaned close enough for only her to hear. "You look tense," he said. "Is something wrong with the perfect little future you owe this family?" His tone held the familiar mockery she had known for years. Before she could respond, a businessman approached Mr. Whitmore with a tense expression. He whispered something sharply. The man's wife glanced at Amari with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. A cold sensation slid down Amari's spine. She sensed trouble before a single word was spoken. Mr. Whitmore's face tightened. He excused himself from the group and looked directly at her with an expression that made her heart sink. Mrs. Whitmore joined him, her posture rigid, as if preparing for battle. Preston folded his arms, ready to watch. They summoned her to a private corner of the ballroom. Mr. Whitmore spoke first. "We received an alarming message," he said. "Someone claims you have been meeting a homeless musician." His voice shook with anger. Mrs. Whitmore continued. "There are also whispers that you might be pregnant. Tell us immediately if this rumor is true." The world around Amari began to tilt. She had planned to tell them gently, but the moment had arrived in the harshest way possible. She took a breath and prepared to answer, knowing that her life would never be the same after this night. The private corner of the ballroom felt colder than the rest of the room. Amari stood between Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, trying to steady her breath as they waited for her answer. Their faces carried a mixture of anger and disappointment that pierced through her. She knew there was no gentle way to reveal the truth. Yes, Amari whispered. I am pregnant. The silence that followed felt heavy. Mrs. Whitmore's expression changed first. Her elegant smile faded, replaced by a controlled fury that made Amari's stomach twist. Mr. Whitmore's jaw tightened as he struggled to keep his voice low. With that violinist, he said, the man who plays on sidewalks, is that correct? Amari nodded. Her heart pounded as she forced out the truth. His name is Lysander. I care about him. Before they could respond, Preston approached with a triumphant look. He pretended concern in front of his parents, but his eyes shone with satisfaction. He had always looked for ways to remind her she did not truly belong. Mr. Whitmore leaned closer. Do you understand what you have done to this family? The partnership we have built for years depends on your marriage to the Carter family, and you ruined everything with one reckless decision. Mrs. Whitmore added, people are already talking. Someone claims they saw you at a pharmacy buying a pregnancy test. Another person claims they saw you leaving a clinic. You have embarrassed us. Amari's lips trembled. She remembered that day clearly. She had worn casual clothes, hoping to blend in. A neighbor from their social circle must have recognized her. She had not imagined that a simple moment of fear and hope could turn into a rumor that spread through the wealthiest families in the city. I did not embarrass you, Amari said gently. I am carrying a child. My child. The music from the ballroom continued behind them, but the tension here felt stronger than anything in the celebration. Mr. Whitmore's voice grew sharper. You will end this. You will fix your mistake before it destroys everything. The threat in his tone stung, but the final blow came when Mrs. Whitmore stepped closer. Her eyes narrowed with cold judgment. You owe us your life, she said. We took you in. We raised you. You will not repay us with this shame. Amari felt something inside her break. She had spent years trying to be the perfect daughter. She had pushed herself to earn every compliment, every nod of approval. Yet in this moment, she realized nothing she did would ever be enough. She lifted her chin. I will not get rid of my baby. The words hung in the air. She had never spoken to them with such firmness. For a brief second, she hoped they might understand her. That hope disappeared when Mrs. Whitmore raised her hand and struck her across the face. The sound echoed sharply. Amari staggered back, her cheek burning as tears filled her eyes. Mrs. Whitmore had never touched her in anger before. The slap felt like a door closing forever. Preston folded his arms with a smirk. I always knew this would happen. Blood matters. Adopted children always show their true nature. The cruelty of his words cut deeper than the slap. Amari tried to swallow her pain, but her voice shook. I am still your daughter. I have always tried my best. Mr. Whitmore did not respond to her plea. His tone was flat and decisive. You have 24 hours to correct this. If you refuse, you will leave this house and never return. Amari's chest tightened. She searched for Lysander in her mind, hoping for comfort, but she could not reach him. He had not answered her calls all week, and she did not know why. That night, after the guests had left, the Whitmore family packed her belongings into a single suitcase. They offered no goodbye, no final embrace. They simply opened the front door and gestured for her to leave. Amari stepped outside with trembling hands. The night air felt sharp against her face. She stood on the porch, abandoned by the family she had loved, and realized she had no idea where to go. She held her stomach gently and whispered, I will protect you. I promise. The cold night followed Amari long after she stepped away from the Whitmore estate. She walked with the suitcase in her hand, unsure of where to go. Every street felt unfamiliar without the protection of the life she once knew. Her cheeks still throbbed from the slap, yet the pain in her chest was stronger. She searched for a place that could offer shelter, even temporarily. Eventually, she found a small motel on the edge of the city. The room was cramped and smelled faintly of old carpet, but it gave her a roof for the night. The next morning, she stood at the window, holding her stomach with quiet determination. She whispered to her unborn child, we will find a way. Although she tried to call Lysander again, his phone remained unreachable. Confusion and fear mixed inside her. She wondered if he had abandoned her or if something had happened to him. She forced herself to stay focused. She needed stability before she could find answers. Her first challenge came sooner than she expected. The architecture firm where she had been interning sent her a short message. It stated that her position was terminated due to restructuring. Amari understood the truth immediately. The Whitmore family had used their influence. She felt her legs weaken, yet she held on to the bed frame and reminded herself to stay strong. She began searching for any job that would allow her to survive. Days turned into weeks, and she moved into a small studio apartment in an old building. The space was barely large enough for a bed and a table. The walls were thin, and the pipes shook whenever someone upstairs used the shower. The rent was cheap enough for her to manage, although it left her with little room for anything else. She took on multiple part-time jobs. She worked as a server in a small diner during the mornings, and she cleaned offices at night. Her back often ached and her feet felt sore from standing for hours, but she pushed through every shift. She reminded herself she was not working for approval from the Whitmore family anymore. She was working to build a safe future for her child. During this time, she met a new person who would change her life. Her neighbor, Mrs. Sophia Alvarez, lived 2 doors away. She was an older woman from a modest background who had moved to the city decades earlier. She always smiled gently, and there was a kindness in her eyes that made Amari feel at ease. They first spoke when Mrs. Alvarez noticed Amari struggling with a bag of groceries. Mrs. Alvarez approached her and said, "You look tired, dear. Let me help you with that." Amari hesitated for a moment, unused to genuine kindness, but she agreed. Mrs. Alvarez carried the bag inside and noticed the simplicity of the apartment. She offered warm food and practical advice. When she learned that Amari was pregnant and alone, her care deepened. She became a mentor and a comforting presence, visiting often to check on her well-being. She taught Amari how to manage her finances, how to cook cheap but nutritious meals, and later how to take care of a newborn. Amari began to feel small moments of peace in the middle of her struggles. She found comfort in simple routines. After her work shifts, she would sit by the window and sketch designs on scraps of paper. Creating jewelry had been a hobby during her internship. She used leftover materials from a thrift shop and pieces of old trinkets she found at flea markets. One evening, she finished a delicate pendant made from a broken silver ring and a piece of blue glass. She held it up to the light and felt a spark of hope. "You have a gift," Mrs. Alvarez said when she saw the pendant. "People would pay for something that beautiful." Her words encouraged Amari to try selling her creations at a small weekend market. The first day she opened her little table, she felt nervous, but customers quickly noticed the uniqueness of her pieces. Many asked about the story behind them, and Amari shared honestly that each design represented resilience. Her income remained small, yet each sale reminded her that she was capable of standing on her own. One night, as she placed her earnings in a small box under her bed, she felt her child move for the first time. The sensation brought tears to her eyes. She sat on the bed and whispered, "I will protect you. We will grow together." That moment marked the beginning of her healing. She knew the road ahead would be long, but she was no longer powerless. She was rebuilding herself from the ashes, piece by piece, with a strength she had never realized she possessed. Months passed, and the rhythm of Amari's life settled into a fragile but steady pattern. She worked, cared for her newborn daughter, and continued creating jewelry late at night when the apartment finally grew quiet. Her daughter, Hope, had brought warmth into the small space, and every soft breath reminded Amari why she fought so hard. Mrs. Sophia Alvarez visited often, eager to hold the baby and offer guidance. In return, Amari helped her with groceries and small repairs around her apartment. Their bond grew into something close to family, something Amari had long believed she would never feel again. Yet a shadow still lingered in the corners of Amari's thoughts. Lysander remained missing from her life. She wondered every night where he was, whether he had tried to find her, or whether he had simply moved on. The loneliness sometimes pressed heavily on her chest, although she tried not to let it show. One quiet afternoon, while she rocked Hope gently in her arms, she heard a knock at the door. She expected Mrs. Alvarez or a neighbor asking about the weekend market, but the moment she opened the door, her breath caught. Lysander Quinn stood before her. He looked nothing like the man she remembered. The violinist who once wore worn jackets and carried his instrument on his back was now dressed in a tailored suit. His hair was neatly styled and his shoes gleamed. A luxury car waited behind him on the street. His expression held a mix of hope and fear as he whispered, Amari! Her pulse quickened. She stepped back hesitantly and tightened her hold on her daughter. How did you find me? I have been searching for months, he said. Please let me explain. I never abandoned you. His voice trembled, and that vulnerability made her pause. She allowed him inside, although her guard remained high. He walked in slowly and stared at the small apartment. When he saw the baby in her arms, his eyes filled with emotion. Is she? Yes, Amari replied. She is your daughter. His breath shook as he touched the back of a chair to steady himself. She is beautiful, he whispered, just like you. Amari felt a sting of confusion and anger. Why did you disappear? I thought you chose to leave me when I needed you most. He sat down and ran a hand over his face. My family discovered our relationship. They locked me in the estate and took my phone. I tried to escape so many times. When I finally broke free, I went to your old home, but the Whitmores refused to tell me where you were. Her heart tightened. She wanted to believe him, yet the pain of her abandonment still felt fresh. You could have found a way to contact me, she said softly. I was alone. I lost everything. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He showed her hundreds of unsent messages and calls. I tried, he said gently. Every day. I needed you. I needed to know you were safe. Amari looked at the screen, her eyes beginning to blur. She had never imagined he suffered too. Yet the sight of the expensive suit and car unsettled her. What is all of this? She asked. Why are you dressed like this? Who are you now? Lysander took a slow breath. My real name is Lysander Quinn. I am the heir to Quinn Enterprises. My family hid that part of my life because I did not want the expectations. Playing violin on the street was my way of breathing. His voice softened. I never lied to you. I only wanted one part of my life to feel real. Amari sat with her daughter in her arms and stared at him. The truth overwhelmed her. She felt betrayed and relieved at the same time. She whispered, Everything feels too confusing. I do not know what to believe. He stood and approached her slowly. You do not owe me anything. I will not force myself into your life. I only want to be here for you and our daughter. I will prove that I mean it. True to his word, he did not push further. He rented an apartment in the same building and visited only when Amari allowed it. He fixed broken cabinet doors, repaired a leaking faucet, and left groceries by her door without knocking. Whenever he held hope, his hands trembled with tenderness. Amari watched him from a cautious distance. The pain he caused had not disappeared, yet his steady presence began planting small roots inside her heart again. She did not trust him fully, but she could no longer deny that he cared deeply. She lay awake one night, listening to Hope's soft breathing. A quiet realization settled in her chest. Lysander had returned, but she would decide the terms of this new beginning. For the first time, she felt the faint outline of a future she might choose for herself. Hope was nearly 3 months old when the storm returned to Amari's life. She had begun to feel a fragile sense of balance. Lysander continued to visit quietly, always asking before he stepped inside, always careful to respect her boundaries. He held Hope with a tenderness that softened even the most guarded corner of her heart. Mrs. Sophia Alvarez often visited to help with cooking or to offer advice, and she treated Lysander with polite curiosity. She sensed his sincerity, but remained cautious for Amari's sake. One morning, as Amari prepared jewelry for the weekend market, she heard Mrs. Alvarez knock on her door. The older woman looked unsettled, her eyebrows tight with worry. Dear, someone was asking about you in the neighborhood, she said. A couple dressed too expensively for this street. They showed a photo of you and asked if you lived here. Amari felt a chill. What did you say? I pretended I did not know you, Mrs. Alvarez replied. But their question sounded serious. I think they will return. The Whitmore family flashed in Amari's mind. Her pulse quickened as fear curled around her ribs. She prayed it was a misunderstanding, but her instincts told her otherwise. That evening, as the sun began to set, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Mrs. Whitmore's voice cut through the line with icy calm. We need to talk. We know everything, Amari. The room seemed to shrink around her. Before she could respond, Mrs. Whitmore continued. You hid a very valuable child from us. That musician you were seeing is not a street performer. He is the heir to Quinn Enterprises. Do you understand what you have done? Amari gripped the edge of the table. Hope is not a tool for your ambitions. You pushed me out of your house. You do not get to call her valuable. Mrs. Whitmore ignored her words. We will be taking action. You are unstable, unemployed, and living in a place unfit for a child. I will not let my granddaughter be raised in filth. Expect our lawyers. The line cut abruptly, leaving a ringing emptiness in Amari's ears. She stood frozen until Lysander knocked on her door minutes later. He had felt something was wrong when she did not reply to his earlier message. When she opened the door, the fear in her eyes made his expression tighten. What happened? They know, she whispered. The Whitmores know who you are. They know about Hope. He stepped inside quickly. How did they find out? I do not know, but they want to take her from me. Her voice cracked as she clutched her daughter protectively. They will use their money and their connections. They will say I am unfit. Lysander moved closer, his voice firm. They will not take her, not while I am alive. Before she could respond, someone knocked sharply on the door. The sound made her chest tighten. When she peeked through the peephole, she saw two sharply dressed individuals holding folders. Lawyers. Amari backed away. They came so fast, Lysander whispered. Do not open it. They stood in silence as the knocking continued. Eventually, the lawyers slipped documents under the door. Amari picked up the papers with trembling hands. The words blurred as she read them. Petition for custody, accusations of emotional instability, claims that she lived in dangerous conditions, statements that she had deprived the Whitmores of their rightful connection to their grandchild. Her breath shook. They want to erase me from my daughter's life. Mrs. Alvarez entered the apartment moments later, having heard the commotion. She placed a steady hand on Amari's shoulder. You are not alone, she said softly. Lysander's voice grew determined. This ends now. I am done letting them hurt you. We fight together. For the first time since her pregnancy began, Amari felt a fire rising inside her. Not fear, not sorrow, a fierce, protective anger. She looked at Hope sleeping peacefully in her crib. They stole my childhood, she whispered. They will not touch hers. She wiped her tears with a steady hand. I am ready, Lysander. Let us fight for our daughter. In that moment, the woman who had once been cast out stepped into her own strength. The Whitmores had begun a war they would regret. The morning after receiving the custody petition, Amari woke with a clear purpose. Fear still lingered in her chest, but a stronger force rose to meet it. She held Hope close, letting the steady rhythm of her daughter's breathing remind her why she needed to fight. When she stepped into the living room, she found Lysander already waiting. He had barely slept, yet his expression was focused. We need a plan, Amari said quietly. Lysander nodded. I have already called a legal team. They are the best in the state, and they are preparing a response to the petition. Amari felt a flare of hope, but she also knew the Whitmores had more than lawyers. They had influence that had shaped her life for years. We cannot defend ourselves only in court, she said. They will twist everything. Lysander approached her. Tell me what you need, and I will make it happen. She took a breath. I want to tell my story, on my own terms. Lysander did not hesitate. Then we will do it. Over the next few days, new people entered Amari's world. One of them was attorney Mara Ellington, a sharp and steady woman known for her dedication to mothers in difficult custody battles. Her voice carried calm authority as she explained their options. The Whitmores will attack your credibility, she warned. They will use your living conditions and your past against you. But if we show your stability and your character, the court will see their intentions clearly. Another arrival was James Nolan, a private investigator with a quiet presence and sharp eyes. He had worked with the Quinn family for years and now reported directly to Lysander. His task was simple but dangerous: uncover every secret the Whitmores had hidden. Amari listened to these plans, her hands resting protectively on Hope. She knew she had to contribute more than fear. I want to build something real, she said. If they call me unstable, I want to show the world that I am not. That afternoon, she sat at her small table and opened her worn sketchbook. She flipped through pages filled with pendant designs, earrings inspired by resilience, and bracelets that reflected her journey. Every piece carried something personal. She realized that her jewelry was more than a means to earn money. It was her voice. With Lysander's encouragement, She began turning her sketches into a brand. She chose the name Resilience because it represented not only her survival, but the strength she wanted other women to feel. Lysander helped her create a simple online page. He took photographs of her pieces with a quiet reverence that warmed her chest. Mrs. Alvarez held hope in the background, offering advice and cheering them on. When Amari posted her story alongside the first collection, she wrote every word herself. She explained how she had rebuilt her life after losing her home, her future, and her supposed family. She included nothing spiteful, only truth. She did not mention the Whitmores by name. She simply spoke about survival, motherhood, and hope. The reaction stunned her. Messages poured in from women who understood her struggle. Orders came from people who admired her courage. A few small influencers even reposted her designs. Amari felt her confidence growing with every kind message. Meanwhile, Lysander worked behind the scenes. He accompanied Attorney Ellington to meetings, providing every document needed to prove his commitment to his daughter. James Nolan delivered reports late into the night, uncovering suspicious transfers, unpaid taxes, and questionable charity funds tied to the Whitmores. Each revelation added weight to their case. One evening, Amari returned home from the market to find Lysander reviewing a folder of evidence. His expression was hard. "They have been hiding financial crimes for years," he said. "They will not walk away from this easily." Amari sat beside him. "I never wanted revenge," she admitted. "I only wanted peace." Lysander looked at her gently. "Peace sometimes requires truth." She nodded. "Then we will show it." Hope let out a soft cry from the crib, and Amari rose to pick her up. She held her daughter close, feeling the steady rise and fall of her tiny breasts. As she rocked her gently, she whispered, "I will protect you, no matter what." She no longer felt powerless. She no longer felt like a discarded child. She had found her voice, her purpose, and her strength, and she was ready for whatever came next. The Whitmore Annual Charity Gala returned with its usual grandeur, filling the hall with polished marble, bright chandeliers, and an audience hungry for influence. It was the same event where Amari had once stood quietly beside the people who claimed to love her. Tonight, she returned not as their shining achievement, but as the woman they tried to destroy. Amari arrived with Lysander at her side. She wore a gown she had designed herself, a flowing piece embroidered with silver threads that shimmered softly when she moved. The dress carried the name of her brand, Resilience. Her hair framed her face gently, and her posture held the confidence she had rebuilt piece by piece. Lysander walked beside her with quiet pride. His suit was simple but elegant, allowing her presence to stand at the center. The moment they entered, conversations froze. Guests turned and whispered. They recognized the woman who had been cast out. They recognized the heir to the Quinn family standing beside her. Their shock spread through the room like ripples. At the front of the hall, Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore hosted the event with cheerful masks. When they noticed Amari, their faces stiffened. Mrs. Whitmore clutched her glass tightly. Preston, standing close by, looked like he had been struck. He stared at Amari with disbelief and a flash of resentment. Lysander leaned close and whispered, "Are you ready?" Amari nodded. "I have been ready since the night they threw me out." The gala program began, and for a while the hosts attempted to proceed as though nothing unusual had happened. Yet the tension in the room grew with every passing minute. Whispers followed Amari wherever she walked. Some guests approached her to offer congratulations on her brand. Others stared with cold curiosity, unsure which story to believe. When it was time for the main sponsor to speak, the host called Lysander Quinn to the stage. The murmurs intensified as he walked up and took the microphone. His gaze swept across the audience before he spoke clearly. "Thank you for attending tonight. I am grateful to be here," he said. "I would like to share something personal." The room fell silent. The Whitmores exchanged nervous glances. Lysander continued, "For the past year, I have been in a relationship with an extraordinary woman. She faced challenges no one should have to endure. She was abandoned when she needed support the most, but she built her life again with courage that inspires me every day. She is the mother of my daughter." Gasps echoed across the hall. "And that woman," Lysander said, "is Amari Grace." The spotlight shifted toward her. She stood still, calm and composed, even as all eyes locked onto her. Mrs. Whitmore's face drained of color. Preston cursed under his breath. Mr. Whitmore clenched his jaw, knowing the evening was slipping out of his control. Lysander smiled gently and extended a hand. Amari, would you join me? She walked to the stage, each step steady. When she reached him, he offered her the microphone. She took a slow breath and faced the crowd. I never wanted revenge, she began. I wanted a family. I wanted safety. I wanted love. Her voice remained even as she continued. Instead, I was told that my worth depended on obedience. When I made my own choice, I was punished. I was cast out for protecting my child. I lost my home, my job, and my dignity in one night. A soft murmur traveled through the guests. Amari lifted a folder from the podium. I stand here not to accuse, but to reveal the truth. These are documents showing how my internship was terminated under pressure. These are records proving I was forced out without cause. And these are reports from investigators who uncovered financial crimes hidden behind the Whitmore Foundation. Screens behind her lit up, displaying evidence gathered by James Nolan. Fake charity expenses, unpaid taxes, illegal transfers. The crowd erupted in shock and confusion. Mrs. Whitmore shouted, "This is an attack. She is lying." Lysander spoke firmly. Everything shown here is verified. The Whitmores used their power to hurt an innocent woman and to manipulate the public. Amari finished with a calm strength. Kindness is not something you display for prestige. It is something you live. A family does not discard their child when she becomes inconvenient. The room erupted in whispers. Reporters scrambled to record everything. The Whitmores stood frozen as their empire cracked under the weight of truth. Amari stepped back from the microphone. She felt a tremor in her chest, but also a sense of release. It was over. She had spoken her truth with her head held high. Lysander squeezed her hand and whispered, "You were perfect." For the first time in a long while, Amari believed him. 2 years passed after the night the Whitmores' empire crumbled. The scandal had spread through every major news outlet. Their charity foundation was exposed as a mask for financial crimes. Their business partners withdrew support. Investigations followed one after another. Unable to escape the consequences, the Whitmores faced charges for fraud, tax evasion, and falsified documents. Their public image collapsed entirely, and their once vast fortune dissolved. Amari watched everything unfold from a distance. She did not take pleasure in their downfall, but she felt a quiet sense of justice. The people who once controlled every part of her life now answered for their cruelty. She refused to let bitterness rule her thoughts. Her focus remained on her daughter and the life she wanted to build. Hope grew into a lively toddler with bright eyes and a gentle curiosity. She often toddled between the display cases in the flagship store of Resilience, touching the glass with tiny fingers as though admiring the shining pieces her mother created. The store had become a symbol not only of Amari's talent, but of her rebirth. It sat on a sunny corner in the city, visited daily by customers who had followed her story since she first shared her designs online. Mrs. Sophia Alvarez sat behind the counter most days, helping customers and managing orders. She had become the grandmother Hope adored. Her laugh filled the shop with warmth, and her presence reminded Amari of the kindness that had saved her when she had nothing else. Lysander often visited between his responsibilities. After the scandal, he had stepped back from his role at Quinn Enterprises. He appointed a trusted colleague, Nathan Hale, to the position of Chief Operations Officer. Nathan was a disciplined and thoughtful man who admired Lysander's leadership and shared his vision for change. Lysander wanted time to be a present father and a supportive partner, something he had long been denied during his sheltered upbringing. On a quiet afternoon, Amari watched him play the violin while Hope danced clumsily around him. The sound filled the store with soft warmth. Customers paused to listen with smiles on their faces. Lysander caught Amari's gaze and offered a small grin. She felt her chest tighten with affection. She had not imagined she would ever feel such contentment again. He finished the melody and set the violin back into its case. "She has your spirit," he said as Hope reached for his hand. "And your stubbornness," Amari replied, smiling as she lifted Hope into her arms. Lysander walked toward her. "You have built something remarkable," he said. "This store, this life, everything you created came from your strength." Amari looked around the shop. The glass display shelves, the soft lighting, and the framed photographs of her jewelry collections reflected years of work and resilience. I built it because I finally had the freedom to choose, she said quietly. Lysander's expression softened. He touched her hand gently. I want to give you the same freedom with me. Whatever pace you choose, whatever future you want, I will walk with you. Hope tugged on Amari's sleeve, seeking attention, and Amari kissed her forehead. The simple gesture filled her with peace. I do not need perfection, she said. I only need honesty and safety for our daughter. You have both, Lysander replied. Mrs. Alvarez approached with a basket of folded cloths. The customers say your latest collection is selling quickly, she announced with a proud smile. They love pieces that carry meaning. Amari nodded. They carry hope. They carry everything I learned. Later that evening, after closing the shop, she stood at the window and watched Lysander teach Hope how to pluck a violin string. Her daughter giggled with each sound. Amari felt her heart settle gently in her chest. The slap that once shattered her world had freed her from a gilded cage. She had built a life that reflected her worth, not the expectations of others. She had created a family born not from obligation, but from trust, healing, and love. As she watched Lysander lift Hope into his arms, she whispered a promise to herself. This is our beginning.